Ancient Bactria was said to be the land of 1,000 cities. Driven by dreams of great discoveries, archaeologists have been looking for those cities for hundreds of years, risking life and limb in one of the world's most dangerous places, Afghanistan. What have they found so far? Come with me and see for yourself. No one would describe Afghanistan today as the land of 1,000 cities. Rugged, remote, ravaged by war and resistant to progress, Afghanistan remains one of the most underdeveloped and least urbanized places left on our planet. That is why modern Afghanistan is a land of almost no cities, and if you can name more than two of them, Kabul and Kandahar, then give yourself an A+ in geography. Yet 2,200 years ago, when just part of what is now the nation of Afghanistan was known as Bactria, that northern sliver alone was celebrated in ancient literature as the wealthy land of 1,000 cities. Just imagine it. Classical historians and geographers writing about an opulent and fertile land rich in fruits and grains, blessed with broad pastures on which cattle and horses grazed. Following Alexander the Great's conquests, Bactria was ruled by Greek settlers who built 1,000 cities there, somehow squeezed among the towering snowbound mountains, torrid sand-blasted deserts, and narrow isolated valleys of Central Asia. That's one Bactrian city for every one of these dots. But how was this possible? How could Bactria back then be so different from northern Afghanistan today? Why are people not tripping over the ruins of these ancient cities? And of course, for every city, we would suppose to find at least, let's say, two nice temples, and maybe a half-dozen public buildings, and lots of large sculpture and houses, and, well, you get the picture. This landscape should be littered with archaeological remains. But where is any of it? It would be easy to dismiss the land of 1,000 cities as mere legend. But money tells a different story. Ancient money. All across this landscape, thousands and thousands of beautiful Greek coins have been found, including the largest gold and the largest silver coins ever minted anywhere in the ancient world. Well-crafted coins like these represent a world not of arid or snowy wastes, but of active mints and markets in real cities overseen by magistrates serving the Greek kings whose names and faces are stamped on the coins. There must be temples where the deities shown on these coins were worshipped. There must be administrators to assess the royal tolls and taxes remitted in this money. Merchants and craftsmen whose wares and wages kept these coins flowing through a vibrant economy. Soldiers who were paid with these coins to guard the cities and their citizens. But where in this world are they hiding today? When I was born 7 decades ago, the location of only one Bactrian city was known, the ancient capital of Bactria called Bactra. It lies beneath modern-day Balkh, a sprawling oasis ruin in northern Afghanistan. Alexander the Great captured this city in 329 BCE and settled it with Greeks, whose descendants made it the capital of an independent Hellenistic kingdom. These were the Greek monarchs who minted so many of those fine Bactrian coins, dated between about 250 and 130 BCE. Kings whose names were Diaratus I and II, Euthydemus I and II, Demetrius, Antimachus, Apollodotus, Eucratides, Heliocles, and even a king named Plato. In 1922, when the French established an archaeological mission in Afghanistan, the first place they excavated was at Balkh. The director of the mission, Alfred Fouché, was certain that he would find at Balkh the remains of a Hellenistic city, a Greek city, with fine imported Greek architecture and art. Unearthing these had long been the dream of Westerners. Some had already dug for them at Bactra, some were themselves buried there. But Alfred Fouché was not easily deterred. Excavating Bactria, he said, would be worth the years and years of sunburn and frostbite it would take. He later changed his mind. Underfunded and understaffed, Fouché labored virtually alone alongside his long-suffering wife. Together they endured dysentery as they dug among slimy, stinking, melting mud bricks that had, he complained, the consistency of lumpy porridge. They uncovered nothing Greek except more coins. Increasingly embittered, Alfred Fouché finally gave up, famously declaring Bactria's 1,000 cities to be nothing more than a mirage. We now know that he did not dig deep enough. There really were ancient Greek ruins down there, buried beneath century upon century of later habitations. After all, Balkh is said to be, in Islamic tradition, the oldest city in the world, the mother of all cities. Meanwhile, other intrepid archaeologists looked beyond the walls of Balkh for better evidence of Bactria's 1,000 ancient cities. In 1926, a member of the French archaeological mission named Jules Barthou passed by a promising site while exploring northern Afghanistan. The place was called Ai Khanum, meaning Lady Moon in Uzbek. Here it is on Barthou's map of his travels. It's a natural plateau at the confluence of two rivers, the Amu Darya and its tributary, the Kakcha. This is Barthou himself on horseback, looking toward the Amu Darya, which then, as now, marks the border of Afghanistan midway between its banks. Barthou recommended that Ai Khanum be excavated because a local child had recently dug up a fragment of ancient Greek art. But no archaeologist came to dig, and the place was soon forgotten. Decade after decade, the search for the lost Greek cities of Bactria dragged on with a demoralizing score. Legend, 1,000 cities. Reality, 0 cities found, not even a Greek city at Balkh. In 1960, one scholar complained that apart from coins, all the remains of Greek-ruled Bactria might easily be displayed on a couple of shelves in a single museum case. Fortunately, everything changed the following year. In 1961, the king of Afghanistan, Muhammad Zahir Shah, embarked upon a royal hunt along the northeastern edge of his realm. He and his entourage paused where Bartu had posed 35 years earlier, by the banks of the Amu Darya. Across the river lay hostile Soviet Tajikistan, but here on his Afghan side lay the large plateau of Ai Khanum. The king could see right away the telltale bumps and bulges of old streets and buildings lying just inches beneath the dusty surface. Had these structures been Greek? It seemed unlikely that anything that old could be so near the surface and not buried deep under later habitations, as at Balkh. Yet the king was shown a Greek Corinthian column found nearby. Intrigued, His Highness notified the French archaeological delegation headquartered in Kabul, and the first full-scale excavations commenced a few years later in 1965, led by my inspiring friend, the late Professor Paul Bernard. Paul Bernard hoped to lift the veil of the Bactrian mirage and to fulfill the shattered dreams of Alfred Fouché by finding at Ai Khanum what had not been found at Balkh. Bernard sought nothing less than what he called an Oriental Hellas and a Central Asian Greece. This was to be expected of an archaeological mission founded in 1922 for just that purpose. Naturally, then, the Greekness of the city unearthed at Ai Khanum has always been heavily emphasized, often at the expense of its non-Greek characteristics. To be fair, however, there is much at Ai Khanum that is quintessentially Greek. Bernard excavated the remains of Greek philosophical papyri, treasury jars inked with Greek labels, a copy of the so-called Delphic maxims uttered by Apollo in Greece and dutifully inscribed on a monument for the expatriate Hellenes who had settled at Ai Khanum, a Greek dedication to Hermes and Heracles made by settlers bearing good Greek names, a Greek mosaic floor, a large Greek gymnasium and wrestling ground or palestra, Greek statuary and architecture, a Greek theater, and a public fountain in the form of a Greek theatrical mask. At the same time, however, much about Ai Khanoum does not conform to Hellenic models that would have been brought east by Greek colonists. Instead, we find Mesopotamian domestic and religious architecture, with houses and temples constructed in Near Eastern style, two sundials with Babylonian and Indian calibrations, and also a massive Oriental palace complex. All over the city, we find structures made of mud brick rather than of marble. The hybrid nature of this city is quite obvious, and it is a mistake to imagine it as a purely Greek city, simply plopped down in Central Asia. If this Greek theater looks out of place in Afghanistan, then this flat-roofed mud brick temple would seem equally out of place in Greece. Ai Khanoum was never an Oriental Athens or Corinth, although perhaps some Athenians and Corinthians were among its settlers. Even so, the Greeks were always outnumbered by the native Bactrians. Disparate peoples therefore learned to live together at Ai Khanoum. Some of them worked side by side, for example in the palace treasury, where we find the names of Greeks and non-Greeks together in administrative texts such as this one. The Greek records a deposit of 500 Greek coins called drachmas. It reads, received from Zeno, 500 drachmas, counted by Oxyboakes and Oxybazus, sealed in the container by Oxyboakes. This careful accounting and accountability was shared by the Greek Zeno and two subordinates with local names, Oxyboakes and Oxybazus, their names borrowed from the nearby river, the Oxus, which was worshipped by local peoples. Together, these individuals walked the corridors of this royal treasury, which was part of a sprawling palace complex that dominated the heart of the city. They walked to work down the city's main street, passing through a monumental gateway or propylaea, strolling past the fancy tombs of several illustrious citizens, including a hero shrine for the founder of the city named Cineas, before entering another guarded gatehouse that led into the vast colonnaded courtyard of the palace itself. Perhaps on other days one or more of these men may have attended the theater, exercised in the huge gymnasium, or worshipped in one of the city's temples. They might wander away from the city center to climb the Acropolis, or venture beyond the city walls to visit the suburbs or surrounding countryside. What was so important about this faraway frontier that the Greek kings of Bactria built a palatial city there and favored its citizens with such fine amenities as a theater seating 6,000 patrons, a massive athletic complex, and impressive private homes described by the archaeologists as mansions? One function was military. Ai Khanoum was a fortress city constructed with massive walls and a defensive ditch. Careful use was also made of the city's natural defenses, such as the rivers along two sides that were reinforced with ramparts. The site boasted a natural citadel high on the Acropolis. That position is still strategic today and has played its part in recent conflicts. The Greek kings at Ai Khanoum equipped the city with a large arsenal stocked with arrows, javelins, daggers, and even chain-mail armor for cavalry. Clearly, one job at Ai Khanoum was to guard the eastern frontier of the Bactrian kingdom against a possible invasion. It was a good plan, a necessary plan, but one that ultimately failed, as we shall soon see. Ai Khanoum also had great economic importance. It gave the Greek kings access to one of the world's most lucrative sources of mineral wealth, including gold, silver, copper, rubies, and brilliantly blue lapis lazuli. From those mines had once come the lapis lazuli used in King Tut's iconic death mask 1,000 years before the Greeks conquered Bactria, and that wealth is still being mined today. In fact, before withdrawing its forces from Afghanistan, the United States identified $1 trillion worth of untapped mineral deposits in the region. Ai Khanoum funneled precious metals to Bactra and beyond, and irrigation provided a rich supply of fruits and grains to feed the city. So whatever happened to this marvelous 1 in 1,000 Bactrian cities? Amazingly, mysteriously, one day Zeno, Oxybuacus, Oxybazus, and all their neighbors ran away and never returned. They left the treasury stockpiled with coins and precious stones. They abandoned their homes and their temples. They turned away from their family tombs. No one really knows why. This was a heavily fortified city, a wealthy city in the midst of a building boom. The treasury, for example, was being expanded to accommodate an influx of even more luxury goods. Iconium had never been more opulent and monumental. So what could possibly have gone wrong to make life suddenly untenable here? I'll give you some answers in my next video titled Iconium, a Lost City, Lost Again. To see it, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Just click that red button in the lower right corner. I'll see you then.